Hi, I'm Christopher Scott, and welcome to the Kid and Friends podcast. Today, I am joined by Mark Fournier. He is a three-time Emmy Award-winning filmmaker, psychotherapist, life mastery, and peak performance coach. Mark is lauded as a world-renowned expert in mastering your life and realizing your greatest potential. Mark has dedicated his life to creating a better world by helping to raise human consciousness through his life-transforming insights and programs. You can find more about his information on the website, thelimitlesscoach.com. That was a mouthful, and I apologize. I stumbled on a few words. How are you today, Mark?
Oh, I'm doing beautifully. Thank you very much. I,
S-
I
So,
I'm at a 10.
yeah, you know what? I watched that video too, where we were talking before the show. I think sometimes if you give yourself a daily rating, like you can change your day, right? Like if you're starting out at one
Yeah,
and you don't realize you're a one and you're down in your dumps, like you're probably going to spend your whole day that way. And some people let the smallest things just derail them for their entire day. And
absolutely.
yeah, so let's start with I guess your history. Three-time Emmy filmmaker, award-winning filmmaker, and life coach. Like how does that start? Like where do you get involved with that, and then we can branch into the limitless
Oh,
coaching.
sure. Thank you for that. Well, obviously they were non sequiturs, had nothing to do with one another. So
Sure.
I was raised to be a life coach and to go down that path because my mother was in that field,
Oh,
and
okay.
so she handed me Psycho Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz and Think and Grow Rich
Wow.
for my 12th birthday, and I was hooked. I couldn't get enough of it. So when most folks are delving into this in their 20s or 30s, here I was 12 years old, and
So
uh,
wait, your
and
mom's
I
imparting
just
this deep knowledge on you at a young age, and you're just absorbing it.
yeah,
Do
I
you
couldn't get
realize
enough
that's
of
what's
it.
happening, or you're just kind of unaware as a child, and that's just mom?
Yeah, it was exactly. Well, it was. I knew my mom was different
Okay.
from other moms because from the time we were 5 years old, she was saying things. We would make a statement like, I suck at this, and she would say, "Cancel, cancel. Thoughts are things. Don't
Wow.
bring that into reality." She was saying that to a 5-year-old. Of course,
Yeah.
we had no idea what she was talking about. But by the time I was a teenager, it had finally sunk in, and where most kids are taught things like, oh, there's Santa Claus. And then as you
Right.
get older, well, we were just kidding. There's really no Santa Claus. Well, she was teaching us that we were limitless beings, how to lead these quantum lives. And I just accepted it that this must be how it really
That's
is.
just
So I
normal, and
never,
it's
I never
far from
questioned
normal,
it.
right? It couldn't be any more further
Yeah.
from what the rest of the world goes through. And yeah, do you have brothers and sisters?
Oh yeah, yeah. And they were all subjected to the same positive
And
psychology.
I guess I'm curious, like you're getting subjected to this, and it feels normal, but you have no idea that she's conditioned you to have a better way of thinking about things.
Exactly. It was no different than a dad who wants his son to be a professional football player, and he's
Wow.
out there throwing the football at the age of 5 every day, and he's teaching him moves, and he's doing all these things, and eventually this kid gets at the very least, let's say, a scholarship to a
Right.
prestigious school because dad just kept putting it in there,
Yeah.
and who knows what that kid may have been if it hadn't been for all of that input. So
But
in our case, my
you're
mom
like
did it
a
on an emotional
lifelong
level.
brain athlete, right? Without even
Yeah, so I
realizing
love
it.
that.
So
Yeah.
are your brothers and sisters coaches as well? Do they take the
Uh,
same path or
yeah, actually, yes, it's so, which kind of says, all right, so I wasn't just a one-off.
right.
This stuff can be taught, and it can be taught to anyone at any level or at any age. And so my youngest brother is, uh, he works with hospice and specializes in helping people cope with their passing. And
Wow.
he is
With
amazing.
the
And
individuals that are passing or the families?
yes, yes, all of it. And
Wow.
so he
That's
coaches
heavy.
folks on how to die.
Yeah.
And in fact, he's working on some programming that will hopefully help a lot of people because the lessons he's learned,
Right.
uh, watching people die, what really matters and what doesn't. But just like me, he's been doing it his whole life, traveling around the world,
Yeah.
trying to find at first the happiest people in the world to figure out what it was.
Right.
Ended up in Thailand, which is kind of stands for the land of 1,000 smiles, and discovered that the happiest people he'd ever seen around the world were the villagers who don't even, they're off the grid. They
Yeah.
don't have
They
refrigerators and
don't
they were
own
the happiest
anything.
people.
They don't have internet
Yeah,
access. Like they're
my
just happy
brother's
to be
launching.
alive.
uh, Yeah, and so of course, so yeah, we're all in that vein. My older brother, he's launching a program called Pickle Zen. I introduced him to pickleball as a way to gain greater social interaction and as a way to get more dopamine into his
Sure.
bloodstream and so on.
And
And it
pickleball's
made
taken
such a
a
huge
huge
impact.
pickleball's become a big thing in the last 2, 3 years. Where I own my gym,
Yeah.
I have a 4,000 square foot gym, 100 plus people on my team, 3,000 feet of mats. But the building we're in is also part of a tennis facility. And last year they
Oh yeah.
redid it and they switched to pickleball. And what they're finding out is that pickleball injuries are through the roof right now. You got these older athletes
It's,
that are starting to get mobile again and start playing, but they're still taking the spills
yeah.
that they would playing on the full size
I,
court. So you
I
introduce
just
him to
had my
that and he starts branching off.
I just had a total. Well, yeah. So in my case, I'm a pickleballer. I just had a total knee replacement from a pickleball
Oh,
injury.
okay.
But most of the injuries are really, you don't see 21-year-olds getting injured playing pickleball.
No.
It's 61 or 71-year-olds who are
Right.
not conditioned for all these lateral movements and
Right.
so on.
Also not good at
So I
falling.
yeah. Yeah, and a lot of broken wrists and stuff, but I've been an athlete my whole life, so I really the knee injury was
Yeah.
because I'd broken my back playing hockey,
Oh,
and
geez.
I always favored one leg because the other leg was partly paralyzed from the injury,
Wow.
so it was different. But yeah, so my brother's using pickleball to help people as a therapy.
Wow.
It's very effective. And so he's doing his thing. And my sister uses art as a therapy. So
Okay.
we all went down the path. I was like you with the ADHD,
Yeah.
whether you've been diagnosed or not, the one who maybe took it the furthest.
Right.
So that became a part of my life. Simultaneously, I always wanted to be a filmmaker
Okay.
and I wanted to make a bigger difference in the world. And I felt that film and television were probably the most effective
Sure.
medium for reaching large audiences and
Yeah.
with compelling insights. So
And when was your
those
awards for
careers grew.
the films? What year were the films?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Those were back in the 90s
So this is
when I was,
pre-YouTube where like right now you can make a video and hit 100,000 people in the same day. Back then, like
yeah.
you're either going to
Right.
VHS, maybe Beta. I think Beta is probably on the way out around there.
Oh, I remember Beta.
You got
Yeah. Betamax.
CDs, but like for you to get your information out back then was a completely different thing.
Oh, you had to get on the network.
Yeah.
That was how you did it. You had to get on television. You had ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox. And I was doing it pre-Fox. So
Wow.
you had three outlets for sharing your information. And so one thing I can tell you is you had to be pretty darn good because
Sure.
there were so few outlets
Right.
that if you were not stellar, your stuff just didn't get aired.
Yeah, there's no way for you to rise to the top because there's only room
Yeah,
for
and you're
so
going
many.
up against studios. Yeah,
Yeah,
and you're
there's
going
no
up
on
against
demand, so you
studios with
can't
hundreds of
rewatch
millions.
anything. Like everything is right there.
Yeah.
You're either looking in the TV guide and catching the Mark's on Tuesday at 11 o'clock, and the next time I can catch him is
Oh,
let's say 4 weeks from now at 3 a.m. in the morning, right? Like there's very little window. So what were those films
I
about?
love it. TV Guide. I love
Yeah,
that you.
kids have no
You're,
idea.
you're aging yourself.
Yeah, they don't know what we suffered through as
What the
children.
hell's a TV Guide? Yeah,
So
funny.
you get these films on television. What are the films about? Are they
Yeah, the
self-help type?
content it was always creating a better world. They were always documentary style
Sure.
programming. I covered a lot of topics like child abuse, family violence, and
Okay.
so on, and won awards in other areas that weren't Emmys, but lots of humanitarian awards and so on for
Wow.
some of these films. Because from day one, my mom also said, not only am I going to give you these tools so that, these superpowers,
Right.
so you can create a fabulous life, but with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
And so
So Uncle Ben,
we
right?
just always knew that, yeah, exactly, Spidey Man. So we knew it was just our part of our life responsibility was to create a better world.
Wow.
It wasn't a question. It wasn't like, and maybe you should. It was
Right.
just, oh no, and that's what you'll do. Kind of like the Kennedys were all raised to be change the world
Yeah.
politically.
But you
We were raised to do it through
but
other means.
the thing I find the older I get is that most people are not very self-aware.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
they
Yeah.
weren't raised in an environment where they were self-aware or things were discussed. Most people don't know how to love. There's just
Yeah.
so many things that could be taught to children that we miss, and it sounds like your mom was intentional with a lot of this, and she
Yeah.
got you on the path. So you get these films, and at what point do you say, okay, this is my life? Like, how old are you at the time?
I think that it was in 1984. I created a film that ended up. I did a long format, short format. The short format went on to be a public service ad that was the second most played public service ad in the country,
Wow.
and it was about a child who was hiding in the attic from his father, which I used to do. That's where I
Okay.
got the idea because my stepdad was a very very abusive
Wow.
alcoholic and very violent physical and emotional. And so I wanted to teach that physical abuse is nothing compared to psychological
Sure.
abuse. And I had seen by then that we were focusing so much on the physical abuse side, not realizing and letting the emotional slip by. I mean, for every household where there's physical abuse, there are 10 where there's emotional abuse.
Right.
You're never going to this and that. You're so fat. So many.
Well,
And so I wanted to demonstrate. Go ahead.
the mental aspect of life, like anxiety, depression, mental abuse, none of that was really prevalent until maybe the last 10 or 12
No.
years. Like you wouldn't even hear about
Oh,
it.
yeah.
And then COVID hit.
No, even physical abuse.
Yeah.
You didn't go to Child Protective Services and say my stepdad is beating me and have him hauled off to jail. What you
Right.
did was you went to school and said my stepdad's an asshole.
Yeah.
There was
You
no
suffered
child
through it.
abuse is illegal. You didn't know
No.
that. You didn't know anything
No,
about
your
it. So my
neighbors could
mom
smack the
just
crap out
gave
of you
us
if they needed
tools.
to.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, my football our football coach was also the taught driver's ed,
Wow.
and I'm 16 driving, and he sees this huge pothole, and he goes, "Don't hit that pothole." And I'm looking at the pothole and
That,
drove straight
that's
into it. He
100% you're
turns
going to
and
hit
just
the pothole.
punches me. Of course. And he punches me so hard it made my teeth rattle, and then tells me get out and throws me out of the car and drives off with the other
Oh,
kids and leaves me for
jeez.
half an hour.
Life was
And he got
different.
away with it.
So you do this film about these kids stuck in the attic, and it
Yeah,
strikes a chord with you, right? Obviously, and
yeah, sure.
you realize that, okay, what I went through, somebody else is probably going through, and you could guide them to a better
Yeah,
place.
yeah, yeah. And by the
Wow,
way, that film, there's a music video version that won one of the Emmys.
really?
And yeah, you can still that one we managed to salvage because so
Okay,
much of this stuff is long
yeah,
gone. And um it's called Dad Had a Bad Day.
okay. I'm gonna
And it
check it out.
started out with the Angry Words was the original title. So you could find some pieces
Sure.
under Angry Words and some under Dad Had a Bad Day, but the 3.5 minute version actually features my older brother as the abuser,
Wow,
and it shows Dad searching for this his son, and he's looking everywhere, and the kid's up in the attic. And at the very end of the film, Dad realizes the bookshelves have been moved, and they go right underneath the door to the attic,
wow,
and you see him punch the door open, and it cuts to the kid snapping his head up as he knows he's been caught,
wow.
and boom, that was
And,
so.
and take
Anyhow,
that to like when COVID hit, like people were locked in their houses, and kids
yeah,
that were going
oh
through mental and
yeah,
physical abuse now had nowhere to go, right? They're just
yeah, and
trapped.
wives too. There was a lot
Yeah,
of battered
maybe a couple
wives that.
husbands too in there, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I do have an ex-wife, and
So,
we won't go there.
so you get on this path at an early age where your mom's kind of not filling your head, but giving you knowledge that most people don't even get or acquire at any point in their lives. And when they do, they get it older. And now you're at this point where you want to share it and help people change the path they're on. Because there's a lot of miserable people out there, right? You can look around.
Well, as, Henry Thoreau, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation,"
Yes.
and, that's at the beginning of my book, The Giving Game.
If you
It's the
ask
first thing is
somebody
that quote.
if you ask somebody what they want out of life, most of the time they'll give you some generic answers. They don't know, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
there's
yeah,
no
yeah,
if they do know what they want, they don't have a path on how they're going to get
yeah,
there. Like it's all talk.
yeah,
And to your point
yeah,
with your brother's job, he probably gets a lot of I wish I would have done this. I wish I could have done this kind of stuff from people. And
yeah,
it sounds like you're guiding people to the part where they don't have to have that conversation, right? Where they can
yeah, yeah.
create their own path.
Live and die without regrets.
Yeah.
Live
So
and die
tell
without
me more
regrets.
about
What
your
would that
stuff,
look like?
man. I want to know about this limitless system and I did watch the video on ego and it sounds like we could probably talk about 50 million different things, right? Because you seem to be a
Yeah,
very
we'll just have to
well-rounded,
come back a
interesting
couple
person.
times.
But I guess we're gonna have to lock
Uh,
onto something, right? So let's talk about
sure.
limitless life and coaching and how does somebody even get started in that? Because again, like most people aren't aware, or they think they're well rounded, and like honestly, I'm gonna be 54 this year, and at 22 years old, I thought I was a sharp dude. 32, I thought I was a little sharper. And then I hit 42 and kind of sharp. And then somewhere in my late 40s, I started becoming very introspective and analyzing how I speak to people, how I talk to people, how they talk back to me, and realizing that I can control my reaction to situations, even though I can't control the situation sometimes. And most people never get to that part. And like, so how
Oh,
I would assume people come looking for you. Right? Like
uh,
you don't have to really
yeah,
sell it. Like
yeah.
there's
I don't
people out there that
advertise.
need help, right? So
Yeah, yeah. I don't. No advertising. It's all word of mouth. I opened up Limitless University so I can give away for free as much content as I could get my hands on to help people create
so everything
more
on the
enlightened
website's free.
lives. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I only uh, I my only source of income is through my one-on-one coaching,
Okay.
and I only coached 10 people at any given time. The
Wow.
rest of it is all free. I make plenty of money as a one-on-one coach, and
Sure.
I'm happy. I love my life, and so there's no need. I don't need hundreds of millions of dollars to
So
be happy. I
this
just
is
need to
very
make a difference.
selfless as well.
So yeah, and we say that, but I get more out of making a difference than I get out of
Oh, for
buying another
sure.
car. So
When I
how
do
selfish,
something
right?
nice for
Not
somebody,
necessarily.
like if you do something nice for
Yeah,
somebody, you get that endorphin rush. It feels good, right?
yeah,
And to
yeah.
me, the nicest things I do are sometimes the most selfish because they make me feel really good.
You're doing it
Yeah. Like,
right now with this podcast. That that is, in fact, I break it just to two things. I tell my clients I'm going to show you how to create a happier, more fulfilling, and meaningful life.
right,
Without the meaningful, it'll always be empty. It's
right,
not enough. I mean, my average client is worth uh, around $100 million. And why are they coming to me if they've got all that money? Well,
right. You would
obviously,
think they're the most
because it's not enough.
successful people on the planet, but you can
Yeah.
be successful in business, but not necessarily in your life, right?
Yeah.
Like you could be the greatest businessman and the worst husband or the worst dad or
There you go.
the
There you
worst
go.
neighbor, right? There's so many things. So when these guys come find you, like, what's the first conversation you're having with them? Like, do you try to get in their head? Is it a one-on-one sit down? Do you give them a pencil and some crayons and like draw a picture and here's your sad place? Like
Yeah.
what do you do?
It's not all that different from what you and I are doing right now. It's
Sure.
a simple interview. They're interviewing me to see if it's a good fit.
Okay.
And at the same time, I'm listening for something very simple. I'm listening to find out uh, how committed are they?
Sure.
I'm also listening, how committed are they to taking control of their life and creating a better life? And uh, and I say basically, tell me your story.
Right.
Well, the average person is just listening to a story. What I'm listening to is the person telling me the story tells me who they are by the story they tell.
Sure.
By the things that they tell me about, it tells me where your priorities are. Well, I make this much money and
Yeah.
they go down that path. Okay,
The
so I can see
details
that
they
you're,
touch on.
you know, yeah, yeah. And so it's very much like in the movie The Matrix,
Yeah.
when Neo stops seeing people and starts to see code. and he can see
Ah,
the whole matrix, the code behind the people and the code that
right.
makes them up. And so he's seeing things as they truly are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I developed that ability over the years, and now I teach that to others.
Wow.
And so in an interview, I am looking at the code. And it's called metacognition when you do it with yourself.
Okay.
And it's something that you've already described you started doing when you became introspective. It's thinking about your thoughts, noticing what you notice, listening to what you listen for, and you start realizing, holy cow, my entire reality is really just the stories that I believe.
Right.
And I'm telling myself stories all day long. And I look for proof that it's true. I find it. That's Goethe. We see
Sure.
what we're looking for. And I'm creating my reality with every thought and every belief I accept and everything I focus on. I'm actually creating it
Right.
in every moment. And I say, but people don't know that. They think they're just observing the reality. And when
Yes.
you learn, no, there's no the reality. There's only interpretation. We can't see the reality for what it is
Right.
because you have to put a lens
It's
on
how
to
you
see.
perceive it.
And whatever lens you place, yeah, that lens is determining the reality that you see, and you can switch lenses.
Yeah.
So this gets
I mean,
obviously you can get pretty PhD in a
but
heartbeat.
you can put that in photography sense. Like so two people can take the same
As a
picture.
filmmaker,
Yeah, you get two pictures of the same exact thing. One can be a masterpiece.
think of a spider.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or just take a spider, look at that spider through a wide angle lens and it look like a teeny little dot far
Yeah.
away. Look at it through a zoom lens and it's 10 feet high and an inch from your face.
All right.
Same spider.
And
How
sometimes
are
in
you going
life
to
you're too
respond?
close to the
You're not
source.
responding to the spider.
Yeah, and you're too close to the source
Yeah.
sometimes
Well,
in
yeah.
life that you
Can't see
don't
the forest
you
for the
need to
tree.
take a step back and say, "Okay."
Can't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're
Go
interviewing
ahead.
these guys, they're interviewing you, and is there a lot of times where you're like, "This guy's not gonna work out?" Like, do you basically just like, "Hey,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
What
not
I,
you, it's
well,
me," kind of a
it,
conversation, like dump
yeah.
them?
Oh, no, no. I'm very, very just like you, totally transparent.
Yeah,
When we finish speaking, if I think that they're not ready,
right.
I'll say, I don't think you're ready. I may also say, I don't think we're a good fit
Yeah,
because maybe what they want is someone who's just going to help them double their income. You're making 10 million a year. I want to make 20 a year. And I heard that you're
sure.
the guy to do it because all your clients make a lot more money. And I go, yeah, yeah, I'll show you how to make more money. But if that's the only reason you're coming, I'm not your guy.
Right.
There's 10 areas of your life. I'm here to help you get a balanced
What are some of
life.
those 10 areas that you
Eh,
cover?
well, of course, so there's certainly career.
Right.
There's financial security, which is very closely tied. My
Sure.
clients usually score a 10 in career and financial
Right.
security.
Yeah, because 'cause they're
But then
high
there's, uh,
profit people.
oh yeah. But then there's relationships,
Right.
and then there's intimate relationship. And I had to separate the two because the relationships you have with whether it's your kids or your coworkers, it's not the same as that one person that you fall asleep with.
Sure.
And so, and then there's wellness.
Right.
There's something that you have. You're probably at a 10 there. You look like you're as fit as a 30-year-old, and
I
you're
try to
in your
stay.
50s.
Right.
So yeah. So wellness is obviously incredibly important. Well-being. This is your mental and emotional health.
Right. And
And but I've been yeah. Go ahead.
no, you go. I'm just
Yeah.
listening.
Well, there's environment.
Right.
Your environment is not only the things around you, but the people around you. Are you
Sure.
surrounded by a toxic environment, or have you created
Well, what's the
an
saying?
environment that really
You're
serves you?
a person is a product of their five closest people to them, pretty much. I don't know if that's the exact saying, but it's something along those lines. And
Yeah,
if you surround yourself with a certain type of people, you're going to have certain types of results. And if you take another route, you're
absolutely.
going to have a whole different approach to life. So you're interviewing these
Yeah,
people, and when are you in your head? I guess you're giving them some kind of a score, maybe to see where they need to work. And I'm using score as kind of a generic, but you're figuring out where they lack in certain areas, right? And if
oh yeah. Oh well, I give them a test. In fact, you can. It's free. You
okay,
can go to
I
your
love free stuff.
download. Go, me too. So, and I love giving away free stuff. So, I have an app called Life Balance Test.
Okay,
Just go to your app store and download Life Balance Test. It'll take you 2 minutes to fill it out. And when it's done, it will tell you where your life is in balance, where it's out of balance,
wow,
where you need to work. And You can take the highest scores, and I just basically say, just leave that area.
Yeah.
You need to come over and work in the
You're already
areas
doing
where,
good over
and
there.
it'll even show a graphic wheel, and it'll show you if you're driving on a flat tire.
Yeah.
Is your, do you have a 10 here and you have a 1 or a 2? Keep in
It's
mind,
like when you have a
like
big
with my
wheel when you're a
client
kid
here.
and you're riding it and you get that flat spot on the big wheel and it said flump 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 like the whole time. Like there's
Oh
people that live their whole lives
my
with a
God, big
flat
wheels.
spot, right? They're,
Oh, almost everyone.
but some
Very few
people,
people have balanced lives.
yeah, and some people are completely unaware that they're out of balance, right? So
Yeah.
these folks that are coming to you are looking for balance, and you know you can't make changes unless you're committed. And I tell kids in my kids class all the time, like I'll show a technique and they'll come over and I have to help move them. And they just kind of just let me do the rest of it. And I'm like, it's not how it works. I'm showing you how to do
Yeah.
it, but you have to do this on your own. I'm not going to be here for you at all times. I'm going to give you the tool. Here's the technique you need in this particular situation. I'm going to guide you through it, and you're learning it right now, but I'm not
There
going
it
to
is.
stand over you and make you drill it and move your body parts through the whole thing. You have to do it on your own. And I think that's probably where you
Yeah.
lose people, right? Like the willingness to do the work, if you're not going to do it, is going to kind of
Yeah.
exclude you
Yeah. There's
from
the
your
commitment.
system, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why the commitment is so critical. It's
Sure.
because commitment, it's the commitment that drives the action, drives the activity, it drives the perseverance.
Right.
They did a test. It was like over 10,000 people who were considered to be the top of their fields in every area, from teachers to lawyers to uh, actors, athletes,
Right.
you name it. And they found there was only one thing they all had in common. It was perseverance, tenacity. It wasn't how attractive or how intelligent. It was
Sure.
just tenacity. In fact, if you ever see the show Arnold,
Yes.
actor, where it's athlete, actor, American,
Yep.
that will you'll see it. It's what is the number one thing that made him who he is? He just refused to give up.
Right.
He didn't win his first bodybuilding competition.
No.
He couldn't get a job as an actor to save his life. He ended up being the number one in the world
Yeah. But
for
who
10 years, number one bodybuilder, number one action hero in the world,
right.
box office
And
draw,
if you look
because
at
he
him,
never gave up.
he's a big gorilla with an accent you can barely understand, right? When he first started out and now
I'll be back.
yeah.
He's got the
And
number one quoted movie line. I'll be back.
that's
So
amazing.
yeah, well, perseverance is driven by commitment.
Okay.
And so that's what I'm looking for is how committed is this person? If they're
Right.
committed enough, then I know they're going to hang in there with me because
Sure.
it's a 1 year contract. So they're going to coach with me for a year. And I'm not a jerk. I'm not going to get in their face, but I will hold them accountable and I'll give
Sure.
them lots of assignments
Right.
in
Well,
order
they I
to
mean,
drive this into their life.
they came to you for a purpose, right? So if I'm coming to you as a
Exactly.
coach, I'm
Yeah.
accepting that you're going to coach me when I need it. So
Yeah.
when they start out, like you guys both make an agreement and it's a 1 year contract, do they is there weekly homework? Like what are the like
Oh, yeah.
you pick one of the 10
Oh, yeah.
categories to specialize in immediately, or is it multiple going at one time?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, what we actually end up doing is I have a list. I mean, because I've written so many programs, books, courses, I have so much content
Right.
that I couldn't get through it all in a year if I wanted to.
Sure.
But much more important is what's relevant to you. So I'm going to first look at your balance wheel. I'm going to find out where in your area, where in your life do you need, uh, where are you most out of balance?
Right.
And we're going to work on that area. And believe me, somebody worth $100 million, they've sacrificed something to get
Oh,
there,
for sure.
whether it's their health, their relationships,
Family.
their marriage, something. Yeah, something is probably taking a big hit.
Yeah. If you're
So we're going to
workaholic, the
take
rest
resource.
sorry. If you're a workaholic,
Yeah,
then you're missing on all these personal categories and work's your priority, so something's missing.
exactly. So
Okay.
we're going to identify that and go straight into it. But the important thing is that the principles that they learn, that they gain to help them in one area of their life can be used in all the areas.
Right.
And so even if they bring me a challenge, because they're always encouraged, bring me questions that are either related to your to challenges and something that you would consider to be problems, or that are related to the goals
Right.
that you want to achieve. Bring this stuff to me, and I'll show you how to resolve your issues and challenges, how to achieve your goals with tools that you'll not only be able to use for that specific application, but in every area of your life. So I always say it's never about the thing. The
Sure.
thing is, my wife is always yelling at me and so on. I go, okay, well, we'll address that.
Right.
It's not about your wife, but we're going to use that as a means of teaching you the
Sure.
big lesson
Yeah. Well,
that will only not only resolve this, but
pick the area you can
help you
make
in
the
all your
most improvement
relationships.
in, and then do well in that, and move some of those skills that helped you improve to the other categories.
Yes, and then it grows organically. By the end of the year, I've covered all the main areas that that I want to convey to give you greater power and control over your life, teaching you the art of metacognition, of being able to see the world, see the matrix,
Yeah.
see what's really happening. Well, I'm not upset because it's raining. I'm upset I because I wrote the story that I need it to be sunny today.
Right.
I believed that story. I became attached to that story, and the reason why I'm upset is because I have an unfulfilled expectation.
Right.
Oh, so it's not about the rain.
Yeah.
And that's where I get to say, so in other words, I can't control the rain, but I can certainly control my expectations.
For sure.
And so you start learning how to take control of your feelings and your behavior and choices at any given moment throughout the day by taking control of what's going on up
Well,
here. It's a powerful tool.
most people don't know what to focus on sometimes, right?
Yeah, and focus is everything.
Yeah.
You can only focus on one thing at a time. That's going to determine what happens next. If I focus on what's wrong and what's missing,
Right.
then everything that follows, the stories, the beliefs, and so on, are going to go. It's like a negative feedback loop
Yeah.
or a positive.
Right. And there's always that half empty, half full kind of person, and the conversation could take either route. So
Yeah,
when these guys are working with you, are they checking in weekly, or is it how
yeah.
often are
So
the
once a week for
conversations?
75 minutes.
Okay.
It's on the phone because I found that when it's visual, our brains are looking at facial expressions and
Right.
body language, and we're thinking about how does the other person perceive me and how am I looking and did I take my shower?
Yeah.
I want to eliminate all that, so it's just audio, so
Okay.
they can hyper focus on the conversation. So yeah, it's 75 minutes once a week, and then I load them up with assignments and say, "I'll see you next week." Can't wait.
Do you find, because for me, what I'm hearing is to to have a coach is one thing, but to make corrections in yourself, you have to be really honest with yourself. And for people
Oh
to
yeah, yeah,
most people are not. And for people to
yeah.
someone to come to you, they would have to have a high level of honesty of what they want to share with you and what they're going to trust you with. And do you find that a lot of people have a difficulty with the trust part initially, and then they build up to a greater trust, and then they're an open book? Like I would think some people are a little guarded at the beginning.
Oh my gosh! All right, I've just got to flat out say it. You are an amazing interviewer. You ask really awesome
Well, thank you.
questions. I mean, most folks are talking about some of the superficial things, but
Yeah,
you're getting into things that I rarely get asked.
I'm genuinely
That's a
curious.
brilliant question. Yeah, and and the answer is it's one of the very first things I do. I do it during the initial interview before we've even decided to work together because I want them to be open with me even then. And I just flat out say, listen,
Right.
human beings judge by nature. It's how we navigate the world around us.
Sure.
Is our senses are telling us what's really happening. Our judgment is telling us, should we be wary of this person? What should we do? And I said, but there's a way to suspend your judgment.
Yeah.
And I'm able to do that. And I can teach that to you, which means I'm able to coach with you without judging
Sure.
anything. You could say, well, I shot my next door neighbor. And rather than thinking, oh, then you must be, a psychopath or,
Right.
a horrible person, my thought is, oh, wow, help me understand what was going on because I can't wait to see what's going on in your psyche
Yeah.
that would cause you to make that decision. I'm just listening, like when you go to the doctor and he says, tell me where it hurts.
Yeah.
And I say to them, listen, if you don't you go into the doctor with hemorrhoids and he says, tell me where it hurts, and you're embarrassed to tell him you have hemorrhoids, and you say, well, I have a headache, you're going to leave with 2 aspirin and hemorrhoids.
Yeah.
So I
And,
said, I
and
can't help you if you
y-
can't tell me what's really going on. But the good news is, all I'm listening for is, how can I help you?
right.
So whatever you tell me, There's no judgment. It's absolute total acceptance. And it's me going, oh, wow, great. More feedback.
I
Give
have
me more
I
feedback
have a
so I can
similar
help
rule.
you.
I have 4 kids, and I have a 26-year-old, a girl, a 20-year-old boy who's gonna be 20, and then twins that are 17 that are a boy and a girl. And one of my conversations,
Oh,
I every night I go around the house and just find them wherever they're at and just have, like, maybe a 2-minute conversation, like, "How's the girlfriend? How's the boyfriend?" Whatever. "How was your day?" But I have a policy that whatever is going on in their lives, they can come to me and I won't judge them. I will do my best to not judge because if I'm making judgment, it clouds my vision on how I can respond to it. And sometimes
yeah.
it's a situation where I've been in life and it's been a similar thing and this is how I reacted. And other times it's something I haven't, but I try to impart some sort of knowledge where they're gonna put some actual thought into how they react to something. But my conversation, like you're talking about with your clients, is you know what? We can't fix it if you don't talk about it. And if you're not willing to talk about it with anybody and you're too scared, like fear drives people, right? Like fear keeps people from succeeding in life. It keeps them from doing well in relationships because people self sabotage for whatever reasons. But fear in general holds people back. And to be part of your program, you got to throw the fear away and have an honest conversation with yourself and an honest conversation with you. Uh, on what somebody's actual goals are and the effort they're gonna put in. So it sounds like a big commitment.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, which is why commitment is the number one thing I look for
Yeah.
because it is such a commitment. I can also tell you the easiest way to suspend your judgment, because as a parent, wouldn't that
Mhm.
be nice if you could do it with your kids and everyone else? And it works like this. If no matter what it is that the other person is doing,
Mhm.
they're doing it for a reason, whether it's because of their DNA, their programming, their perceptions, their lenses, whatever's going on in their psyche, their conditioning. And if you had identical conditioning, if the world looked the way it does to them, if that's how you saw the world, if that's
Right.
how, whether through your upbringing, through all sorts of influences, if that's how the world looked to you, you would have done the exact same thing.
Sure.
How can you judge someone for doing exactly what you would do if you were them?
Right.
And so you immediately say, well, I can't judge you. All I can do is learn about you from your behaviors and choices.
Yeah.
You're helping me see the world through your eyes,
Right.
whether you commit some heinous crime or whatever it is. Oh, okay. So let me see the world through yours. There's always a rational, logical explanation for a person's behavior.
Yeah.
It and it is all now it may be something that you would never ever do.
Sure.
Well, that's just because the inside of your, I call it the glass box. The inside of your glass box looks different from the
Right.
inside of theirs.
And I have a
And your
different
glass box is
perspective
just
on
made
it.
up of, oh, yeah, yeah. And so it makes it again very easy not to judge
Yeah.
because I already know that uh, the reason why you did that, there's an explanation.
Right.
And it's not because you're evil. If
Right.
I climbed inside of Putin's head, it doesn't matter whose head I climb inside of. Once I
Yeah.
understand them, I will know exactly what they do and why
I
they do it,
was
and it'll no longer seem insane.
speaking of Putin, I was literally in my car the other day and I was driving and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, is he a bad guy with good intentions or is he a good guy with bad processes on how he does stuff? Right? Like he's one of those
Yeah,
anomalies where like there's obviously intention on either side of it. But his perspective, like, we'll never understand. And to like to your point, like, if you've gone through the same thing, you'll understand why somebody did something. But if you don't, you have to kind of find a way to insert yourself into that kind of a perspective. Does that make sense?
yes, yeah. Well, there's a lot of deconstruction.
Yeah,
Sometimes without even talking to them, I can just simply I can figure out, well, a person who does this, most likely this is what's going on in order to make that happen.
sure.
If I see a person stabbing themselves in the face with a fork, well, that may sound like a really bad idea. And I could
Yeah,
easily say, well, that person's crazy and all, and so on. But if I climb in their head, it turns out that that person actually believes that there's an insect crawling in their face underneath the skin and they're trying to kill it.
yeah,
And it's like, oh, okay. So you're not trying to hurt yourself. You're actually trying to heal yourself.
yeah.
Almost everyone, no matter what they're doing, there's usually the intent to create something better,
Wow.
whether you're attacking another country, whatever. So rarely is there actual such a thing as evil intent.
Right.
Now, there are evil actions everywhere,
Sure.
but rarely is it is the catalyst of evil.
Right.
It just appears to be evil to us because, of course, we don't understand it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I condone evil
No.
acts. It just means that I understand them,
But the
and
perspective from the
understanding
other side could be,
is
"Hey,
critical.
we're doing this to save
Absolutely.
people," where
If
you're
Putin really, yeah, if Putin believes that the world would be better off with his form, his regime,
right.
and he believes that Ukraine should be a part of the bigger picture, and
Yeah.
if he believes it, then he's not doing anything wrong.
Right.
You know, the perfect example, it's 9/11.
Yeah.
I was on a stage the day after 9/11, and everybody wanted me to condemn the bombers, and I
Right.
just said, I can condemn their act all day long,
Sure.
but how can I condemn them? You know what they did? They're like, no, what? I said, these guys sacrificed their lives for
Right.
a cause in which they believed, thinking it would create a better world by eliminating what they thought to be evil.
Right.
They thought they were raised to believe human beings, I mean, that Americans are evil, and they are trying to save the world
Right.
by doing what they did. What have you ever done that was that committed?
Yeah.
Have you ever considered killing yourself for the greater good? No.
No.
These guys are, we make movies about superheroes. These guys were, by all definitions of a hero,
Right.
they were being heroic.
Yeah. From their
And of course,
side
it didn't
and
go
their
over
point of
well.
view.
The audience was like going, no, 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 I can't accept that. And I'm
Right.
like going, well, you know what? They didn't think that they were doing anything wrong. So how can I condemn them?
But there's always different ways to
I
look at
don't
every
like the way they did it.
situation, right? Like one of my, I'm a big
Yeah.
Star Wars fan, and I'm just going to get off topic for one sec. But one of my favorite books is called Star Wars from a Different Point of View, and basically it's the whole movie Star Wars, but none of it is from the main character's point of view. Like remember the one robot that breaks down in Star Wars, and then R2 gets selected instead, like. That scene in the book is from the other robot's point of view, watching R2D2 and
Oh,
C3PO get off.
wow.
The very first scene in the book is when the ship's being taken over by Darth Vader. It's the captain, and he's writing a note to his family telling them, I might not make it through this. But it's all these people, and they're
I
all
love
going
it.
through the same situation that you saw in the other movie, but it's completely different because you're seeing it from their point of view. And to your point, if
I
you're
love it.
if you're someone who's sacrificing yourself for the greater good of others, whether it's a good in your mind it's a good intent, but how others view it as maybe evil is irrelevant because they're truly believing in something they're doing.
Yeah, let's go one step further because you are, I mean, this is exciting conversation for me because if you want to change the world, you got to change the way we view the world, the way we
Right.
see each other. If you want to put a stop to things that you believe are evil or and so on, you've got to first understand them. In the movie Ender's Game,
Yeah.
there's the line, "Once you understand your enemy, you can't help but love them."
Wow.
It's because why he says that is because once you fully understand them, you actually see the world through their eyes and you can see their pain and suffering.
Right.
And you can have compassion for them because of what they're experiencing and going through. We don't have compassion for a bully. Well,
No.
guess what? There was, speaking of child abuse, I saw a woman at a store and she was shaking her little girl who was in the push cart, and yeah, and she's yelling at her, and people are kind of looking at it like, well, this sucks. And you could tell everybody wanted to run over there and just
Right.
pound on this
Yeah.
lady. And she was not very attractive, so it was easy not to like her.
She was
And for,
firing on all cylinders
and
for
bec-
reasons to hate her.
yes, I won't go into any detail
Sure.
about her stretchy pants or any
Right,
of
there you
that,
go.
but
They say
she was
pink on the back by
definitely
any chance?
okay. So, but because of my training,
Right.
I did. My first thought was compassion. I walked up to the woman and just tapped her on, just put my hand on her shoulder, and I said, "It looks like you're having a tough day."
Yeah.
And she looked at me, she went white, and she just started to cry. And she's like, "Oh my God, my husband, this and this and that." And she was having a bad day.
Yeah, and the kid
And of
was
course, she
suffering for it,
also, yes, which is
right?
not okay. But the
No.
average person would be like, shame her, beat her, save the kid.
Right,
Well, the
but
best way to save the kid is to help this woman,
yeah,
is to give her help. So I said, listen, I have some numbers that you could call.
sure.
I was working with the Child Crisis Center and so on. And I gave her help. She gives me this hug and says, thank you. And then she turns to her kid, she picks her up and just hugs her and
Yeah,
says, I'm so sorry, honey.
but you
And I
don't
turn
we
around and everybody's like going like, whoa.
as people, we don't realize how we treat each other. We've been doing
Yeah.
construction in my house for the last, I don't know, 60 days. New kitchen, walls come down. We made the kitchen bigger.
I remember that.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and it's we're in the home stretch, right? I haven't eaten off my anything cooked off my kitchen oven in over 2 months. Like just fast food every day. It's
I
awful.
can't imagine. Well, we had to cancel our last
Yeah,
interview because you weren't going to
they
have electricity
had
that day.
construction guys, so I apologize. But my son comes in, and I'm moving some furniture, right? And he's out, he's doing his whole thing. He's having his day. He's unaware of how my day's going. And he walks in and I'm like, "Can you help me move this?" And, as a dad, I'm just assuming that he understands where I want him to maneuver this thing that I'm
Oh,
moving and take a certain route. And
ADT, mind reader.
yes, and he's not doing it, right? So I lose my shit and I yell at him. And he just looks at me and he goes, "I just walked in." And I looked at him, I go, You know what? You're right. Like, I'm angry about these 30 other things, and you're my outlet because you came in. And that's basically what's happening with the child and the mother. She needs the help, but the only way she can get it out is through the frustration that she's having with the child. And the child is not the actual reason. And you recognize this and you walk over and help her. And is this something you do often? It seems like it's probably like a common thing for you where, maybe it's not a
Yeah, I
child
mean,
getting beaten, but somebody who needs a
oh my gosh,
conversation.
it's on every level. We pulled
Yeah.
over in the middle of the road yesterday. We're driving along, and there was a mother duck and about a dozen tiny little ducklings, and they're trying to cross the road,
Yeah.
and they were going to be slaughtered. And I literally immediately just said, "Stop the car!" And we
Right.
stopped the car, slowed it down, stopped the traffic behind us, got out of the car, ran, and I shoot all the ducks off into the woods, and got back in and started driving. People are clapping their hands while I'm shooting the ducks as they're kind of trying to drive around our car, and
Wow.
I'm thinking, and they're all thinking this is a heroic act.
Right.
And it didn't even occur to me that I was being
No.
heroic. I thought, well, I'm just doing what anybody would do. And my partner Mary is in the car, of course, and she's going, "No, it's not what everyone would do. Most people would just try to get around the ducks and hope that nobody hit it.
Yeah, or
They
honk their
wouldn't
horns
take
at it,
action."
and how you react
Yeah.
to things is
So
different, right? I'm
yeah,
a big
and
fan of. You ever seen the movie Fight Club? There, there's a
oh yeah.
there's a part where he's on the plane and he's talking to people, and he calls it single serving friends, right? Like where you talk to somebody just for the amount of time they need, kind of like a tissue. You blow your nose, throw it away. Like there's moments where people
Right.
need you. You don't need to be their friend. You don't need to be their best friend. You don't need to do anything. Like I was in Home Depot a couple weeks ago, and there's a black gentleman standing next to me. There are only two guys in the aisle, and the Temptations comes on, and the music in the store, and I'm just sitting there. I'm jamming to it for a second. I'm kind of caught in the moment, and I look over, and he's doing the same thing, right? And we just kind of look at each other like, "Hey, man!" Like we had a moment,
Oh,
right? And that was it.
Motown, brother.
That was it. And I'll never see the
I
guy
love it.
again.
That's
Probably
a
never talk to him.
connection.
Yes. And
Yeah,
and
you made a
connection
connection.
sounds like it's something that's a big part of your system as well. Like connecting with yourself and
Yeah,
connecting with
well,
others.
oh yeah, and with others, finding what you have in common.
Yeah.
You see, we have a tendency to look at the things about them that are different and then judge them harshly for that instead of what we have in common. Imagine uh, uh, if I sat down with Putin and we sat down and we had a conversation where I got to learn about him and what we have in common, and we'd find that 90 some percent of humans have the same things in common. That about 90% of us is
Right.
the same.
Yeah.
Just like when you look at our DNA, we're only 2 or 3% different. Our DNA is only 2 or 3% different from a chimpanzee.
Right.
That 3% can make a big difference,
Sure.
obviously. But if you realize that we're all almost the same, there's just a few differences, it doesn't seem so onerous, so
No.
impossible. That tiny little difference, then with Putin, I get to understand him well enough to figure out what is it that he's trying to accomplish.
Right.
And maybe there's a better way of getting there, something that doesn't require the devastation of an entire nation.
Sure. But
And so that's how we stop these issues is by understanding our enemy to the
yeah.
point where we now can work together. I don't teach agree to disagree.
Right.
I teach I say, no, that's lazy.
Yeah.
Agree to disagree. Well, fine, we'll just stop there. I say, no, don't quit.
Yeah.
Agree to agree. Keep going until you find a way
Right.
that you can see through the same lens.
Well, it's
So,
funny too because like the world we live in right now, everybody is. If you go on social media, everyone is so negative, right? And if
yeah.
if you watch the
Oh my
news,
gosh,
you're
especially politics.
yeah, if you're left or right, it doesn't matter. You're only getting fed the things that matter to you, like that you get caught in these algorithms and they put you in this little box that you go in, and usually that's your 3%, like we were talking about, that keeps you from the other folks. And if that's your main focus, like we need to your point, find a way to go back to connecting on that other 97%, because that's where you're really going to make some progress versus the 3% that's different.
Yeah. Now they're no longer this enemy that is so, like, again, back to Ender's Game. Now these other creatures looked very different. They looked like giant praying mantis.
Okay.
And so they looked very, very different. But in the end, they wanted the same thing we wanted.
Right.
They want to survive. They want to live happy, meaningful lives.
Sure.
Even these creatures still wanted the same thing with only the tiniest of differences.
Yeah.
So when we first find our commonalities, it's easier to then accept the other person as being viable.
Right.
At which point we'll then make the effort to work out the last 3%.
Yeah.
This is a fun conversation, man.
That 3%, thanks, man. That 3%'s the hardest part, though, right? Like,
Yeah,
people
it
are
is.
so tied up in that. So you're having these people, and they're coming in and they're talking to you, and they're being honest with themselves, and you're giving them homework, or I guess not homework, but Are you giving them
Assignments.
different
Call them
assignments? But you're coaching them on different ways to think about situations and how to approach life. And there's always that one guy where the grass is greener on the other side, and there's always that one guy where the glass is half empty. It's about changing your perspective. And when you're coaching these folks, do you find it easy to identify where these people need to improve, or sometimes it's a little bit of a battle?
Well, maybe when I started 50 years ago, I'm 67. I've been
Are
doing
you
this a
really?
long
I would have
time.
never guessed that.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Thank you. My ego loved hearing that. I appreciate the validation.
Sure.
So yeah, over the years, it's now reached the point where there's I've seen just about everything there is to see. I've
Yeah.
been asked just about every question anybody could ever ask. And so now it's pretty easy for me to
Sure.
see those anomalies, to identify them and to see what's behind them, what's driving them, and then to help them reconstruct them rather than living their lives based on all of the stories and beliefs that have been handed to them
Yeah.
by others, by their parents, by the media, and just accepting them as is. I'm a big proponent on question everything.
Sure.
Man, that's one of the assignments, and they'll come back over and over throughout that year. I want you to question everything. Question this. And now you need to question that. Why do you do this? Well, what do you mean? Everybody does that. No, they don't. Some
Yeah.
people do it this way. Why do you do it? Well, because I always have. Well, is that serving you?
Right.
Is that
But
getting you closer to being happy and fulfilled and so on? And they're like, wow, no, it's not.
but you
I mean,
could.
think of this, every goal doubles as a limitation.
Yeah.
Now, people think all goals are good.
Right.
Well, actually, if you say, I want to double my sales in a month, why did you not say 10x my sales?
Yeah.
You just limited yourself to only doubling. People just don't think that way.
Right.
But once you start to, suddenly you realize how many limiting thoughts I have. So question these limiting thoughts.
Sure.
And sorry, go ahead.
No, no, no.
Go
I'm
ahead.
just thinking about these limiting thoughts because, like, to the point earlier, most people will say they have a goal, but they don't really have a goal, right? They're talking
Yeah.
about it. They're the coulda, shoulda, woulda people, and I find that most people I interact with are the coulda, shoulda, woulda people, and not because they want to be or whatever, and it might be fear holding them back, or sometimes they just don't know a process to get anything. Like, I do a lot of stuff I
Yeah.
love, right? Like, I fight people every day. I ride a Harley every day. I do a podcast. I interact with a lot of people on a regular basis, and people are like, "How do you have time?" I'm like, I just do it, right? It's not a goal of mine. It's just something I do. I need to get it out. I need to have the conversations with people. But when you put something in front of people, I think a lot of people shut down, right? Like, oh, you want to be a millionaire? Okay, what are you going to do to be a millionaire? Like, I get people coming to my gym all the time, and they're like, I want to be a professional fighter. I'm like, well, first of all, how many fights you been in your life? And they're like, 0. Okay, so let's start with something a little bit lower, and let's work on coming to class and just learning how to move, right? It's good to
I
have a
love
goal,
it.
but if you don't have steps to get to that goal, your goal is worthless, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you're too. I
Yeah.
mean, let me double my sales. Okay, what are you going to do? Well, no, I'm just going to double them. No, that's not how life works.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna have to come up with a
No,
plan and figure it
it
out.
goes back to deconstruction. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's deconstruction. It's the ultimate moonshot. How did we get to the moon? It was impossible at the time. He said we're going to go to the moon, land a man, and bring him home safely within this decade. That was impossible. They were 20 years away.
Right.
And how did they do it? They started at, okay, we're bringing somebody home from the moon. How did we do that?
Yeah.
How did we get to this point? How did we get to this? And they deconstructed all the way until they said, all right, in order for any of that to happen, first we need to develop a rocket fuel.
Right.
First, we need this. So we're going to focus on this now. In fact, in the movie, I use movies a lot,
Sure.
being a filmmaker. In the movie Apollo 13, and the guy says, "We got to. This has got to happen." Da 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 da. And the guy goes, "There's 270 things that have to happen in order to bring them home. You're working on 117.
Right.
Let's start with number one. First of all, you've got to make this fit into that, this square fit
Yeah.
into that hole using nothing but these." And so they work their way into the solution. And that's what you do with goals. I do a thing called goal setting versus goal getting.
Okay.
I say goal setting, no matter, it's popular because it's easy, it's fun.
Yeah.
Goal setting, I'm just going to make a list of all the things I
Right.
want. I want a bigger house, I want this, I want that. But goal getting, now that's a whole different process.
Sure.
Goal getting is now, how do I take this and do what you just said?
Right.
Break it down until it's, and what do I do today? And if I do this every single day, that's how the goal will end up manifesting.
Right.
There's no magic.
Yeah. Baby
It's real
steps
simple.
to
The
get to
journey of
the goal
1,000
line.
steps.
Yeah.
Yeah, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, Lao Tzu.
And
So,
and a lot of people don't understand that part of it, right? Like they talk and they say, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that, but they don't know how to follow through. And to your point, like you have these guys that are very well taking care of people financially that are still lacking in other part of their lives, and they're coming to you for advice.
Always.
And when
Yeah.
you have these conversations, and let's say this guy's terrible at love, but wellness is one of his things as well, and he's okay. Now he realizes I have these steps I can make my love life better, or how I interact with people. Maybe I can start taking those same skills and move them over to the wellness category and say, okay, you know what? I want to bench
Absolutely.
315 pounds. It ain't going to happen today, right? You're going to take that weight off and
Yeah.
you're going to get crushed. But if you start at 20 pounds or whatever and you build up over time, you'll eventually hit your goal. And we're in a society now where everybody wants everything now, right? Like I with my
Yeah.
day job, I deal with people that are union tradesmen. And there are a ton of times where you get guys that are like, they're an apprentice for like a couple months, right? And it really should be 5-6 years, and they quit and they go off on their own thinking they know everything, right? But they never went through the
Yeah.
process to get to that, being a true master of anything. Because everybody wants shortcuts, and with the internet and social media, everybody believes that I can just do whatever I want. No, it's not. It's not how it works. You have to make these steps and move in the right direction.
This is so important. There's I took the wardens of all the top 30 prisons, federal and state prisons in America,
Hmm.
and I took the 30 of them through my life mastery course curriculum. It's a 12-week program at the time. It's a year long now, but I took them through the program, all 30 of these wardens, and I ended up teaching them how to help their prison population,
Right.
how to give something more than just incarcerating these individuals
Yeah.
and then sending them back on the streets, because the rate of recidivism is 75,
Sure.
70 some percent. They end up coming back.
Like none of the
And so I was
behaviors are
giving
getting
them
corrected.
tools. Yeah, exactly. So I gave them tools for it. And in the process, I ended up going to their prisons. And I mean, I've been on death row a half a dozen times,
Yeah.
meeting with these death row inmates and talk about insight, right?
Right.
And when it was all over with, the one thing I learned that they all have in common, like the most successful people all have in common, is perseverance.
Hmm.
The one thing they all have in common, immediate gratification. So it's the thing you said, we all want
That's
it
the
right
thing
now.
that got them in trouble,
It's
though,
the
right?
desire. Yep. Immediate gratification is why they were there, because they were pursuing immediate gratification.
Wow.
Those of us who are able to wait for that $1 million instead of stealing it from somebody on
Yeah.
this afternoon,
And again,
we can stay out of trouble that
but
way.
to have that behavior, you need to have some sort of knowledge, where it's imparted on you or you've learned over the years. And
Exactly.
we're in a
Yeah.
society now, at least in the US, where, like if I look back at my family, like my parents didn't teach me how to really love others. We grew up in a different era where parents' job was to go to work, keep you alive, and feed you, and then check in on every now and then, right? And now
Yeah.
parents are closer,
Yeah.
and but I think back, and my mom will watch this sometimes. She's like, "No, this isn't what happened." I'm like, "Yeah, this is what happened, Mom. This is my perspective." I didn't learn how to love the way I should have until I got older. Like life advice wasn't imparted onto me the way it should have been, and like on a lot of stuff, I was probably late to the table as I got older and figuring it out. And then I'm sure other
Yeah.
people are in different categories, but we don't do a good job of educating people on life skills like we're talking about right now, even in like high school, right? Like you have like a home ec class, but there should be other classes on how to interact with people, how to set goals, how to,
Oh
uh,
my gosh.
yeah,
Yeah.
like there's just so much
Life
missing.
skills. Life
Yes.
skills. Yeah. Yeah. I had a school in Hawaii for 4 years where we incorporated life skills and the kind of things that I teach into their STEAM curriculum,
Wow.
ages uh, kindergarten through eighth grade. In fact, the
Okay.
only reason we shut it down was because the volcano, it was on the Big Island,
Oh,
wouldn't
geez.
stop erupting. And after 2 years of that, my the managing directors were spent so much time in the hospital from the sulfuric acid. They finally said we got to go back to the mainland, and
Wow.
I didn't want to have to train all new staff,
Sure.
but we learned a lot from that. And certainly, we found that the children who gained the most in these life skills and in understanding limiting beliefs and so on, and how to attain and how to reach goals and such, their grades skyrocketed.
Wow.
It was teach this first,
Yeah,
and this will follow.
that makes
And
sense.
so it's we do it the other way around. We're going to teach them all the basics so they can survive, and then maybe someday they'll learn how to thrive,
Right.
but certainly not in school.
Yeah.
That'll have to be later on. Imagine if you did it the other way around.
Yeah. Imagine if people were well-rounded mentally and then they start school. Like let's say like right now you start at 6, right? Like your brain's barely developed. Right? What if we had life skills for the first 4 years of school, then actual math skills and everything else, and the world would be just by default probably a better place because people understand how to interact. Like you and I could be kids on the playground and you punch me for taking your ball, but I don't know that you got in an argument with your mom this morning or whatever. And, I might say, hey, why did you hit me? And that's not how life goes right now.
And I would say I don't because I'm mad at you.
Yeah,
I don't even know myself why I hit you.
exactly. And to my point, like most people don't know themselves. So you have this ability to see in others what they may not see in themselves and help
At
guide them
first, and
in the right
yeah.
direction to start making corrections. And you probably get some crazy success stories. And I'm not talking financial. I'm just talking like
Oh
in
yeah, well
other
you
parts of
mentioned
life.
Cameron Bodden. He is extremely successful, an incredibly successful businessman, and financially incredibly well, but also in every other area of his life now. He ended up creating his own podcast, which is one of the things that you had a chance to look at. He did that simply as a result of working together and him getting to a place where he says, all right, so I have the money, I have all these things, but I want more meaning in my life.
Right.
And so, you see, that's the thing why I'm so eager to help human beings become more enlightened, because enlightened beings, that's how we save the world.
Yeah.
Enlightened beings do not abuse. They don't abuse themselves. They don't abuse the world. They don't abuse others.
Right.
In fact, they don't allow it within their own area of sphere of influence. And so, a world full of enlightened beings is a world that no longer has any issues
Yeah. If
because they're
everybody's
solved as
treating
quickly as
each
they come
other
up.
the right way and trying to have understanding. Like, and it's funny because like little things like that you're talking about. Like if there's a spider in my house, I don't kill it. Take it outside. And what? I'll usually say something
Yeah.
like, hey man, you're in the wrong spot. Like, thanks. Your job is to
Yeah.
kill the bugs
And let your
outside.
kids catch you doing it, right?
Yeah.
And let your kids catch you doing it, because I love to teach parenting, and I love that you brought up that you've got the 4 kids. Is kids may be terrible at listening to their parents, but they're amazing at imitating them.
Yes.
What a teenager is when people go, wait till he becomes a teenager and then you're in trouble. And I go, no,
Right.
you're missing the point here. You know what that teenager is? It is that child who has been watching you all these years
Yeah.
show them how to behave. And now, as teenagers, they got the testosterone, they're bigger, they're stronger.
Right.
Now they're acting out all the lessons that you've been teaching
Yeah.
them without realizing it. Every time you said, tell them I'm not here, you're teaching them to lie. Okay,
Right.
great. Every time you yell at them when you're angry, you're teaching them to yell when they're angry. And so, yeah, you've got to be, as Gandhi said, be what you wish to see in the world. You've got to do that as a parent.
Yeah.
You've got to show your kids you want to teach them to be compassionate and loving and so on. Let them see you saving the spider,
Yeah.
saving the ducks.
And if I look at
Let them
myself in the
witness
mirror,
you.
like I think I'm a better parent now that I'm more well informed on myself than I was when they were small. And I think they see those changes. And I think that they watch the podcast, they see these conversations I have. And, I see how my behaviors now with them and how I interact with them, how they take it out into the world. Whereas they were younger,
Yeah.
I may have behaved a little different. I'm not saying I was a bad parent, but I wasn't winning any Dad of the Year awards. I'll put it that way, right? But as I get better and I get more in tune with myself and my faults and my shortcomings, they see that and they can become better people just watching how I've corrected myself. Does that make sense?
Oh, it not only makes sense, I encourage it, even to the point of turning yourself in.
Yeah.
Kids, they know when dad's being a dick.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
So you know what, honey, that was inappropriate. I should not have yelled at you. I was taking it out on you, and that's not okay. And then when we get it wrong, make sure that we fess up to it so they can learn from our mistakes, and also
Right.
they can learn that it's okay not to be perfect.
Yeah.
I'm okay. You know what? I'm not perfect. No one is, and that's okay. You don't need to be perfect. All you need to do is learn from your mistakes and keep growing.
Right.
And I'm doing the same thing. So when I make a mistake, I'll let you know. I told my kids, you can debate with me on any topic. I'll never say because I said so.
Right.
If you win, then we'll do it your way.
Sure.
If you don't, then we'll do it my way. I don't want to raise sycophants and followers. I want to raise leaders.
Right.
I don't want to raise a kid who's been taught, do what I say because I say so and I'm the authority.
Yeah.
That's a kid who follows the leader of a gang who says, go shoot that kid or take these drugs or
Right.
and so on. You want to raise a child who questions everything, including authority.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pain in the ass because
Sure.
they're going to be questioning you nonstop.
Yeah.
But what kind of children are you raising when you teach them to question authority? You just say, do it with respect
Yeah.
and do it with kindness, but question everything and everyone. My kids got into a little trouble in school from time to time by
Sure.
questioning teachers. Teachers would call us in and they'd say, well, we were having an issue here. And we'd say, that's how I'm raising my kids. If you can't handle a child questioning what you're teaching,
Right.
then maybe you're not teaching the right thing.
Yeah.
You should be able to stand up and explain why it is you're teaching them this.
And there's
so,
we have a lot of people in charge in life that aren't qualified. And,
yeah,
and
and kids like this will flesh them out.
yeah, and if you
teacher
ask the
can't defend their
appropriate
position, they shouldn't be teaching it.
right, and if you ask the appropriate questions in a respectful manner, you can get to an
Exactly.
answer or an outcome.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I find that again, all this goes back to we're kind of focusing on like parenting and kids and stuff, but that's fine because they develop into adults, right? And if you can't get these things moving in the right direction, like your mom did with you when you were young,
Yeah.
some of us are late bloomers. I'm a late bloomer on a lot of this stuff. And I'm honest with myself when I say that because, I'm like most people. I went through life thinking, I'm in control, worried about tomorrow, not worried about the future. And it seems to be a common theme with a lot of people that I know from at least my age group. And kids are the same, but I see it still like as guys are getting older, like they have goals but no idea how to get to them. They have dreams but are afraid to chase them. Like when my kids were small, they're like, what should I be when I grow up? I'm like, whatever you want to be. It's all that matters. As long as you find something that makes you happy and gives you purpose, that's what's important. I don't want you working a 9-to-5 job, working for the weekends and just being miserable and working so hard that you're trapped by all your possessions as well. Right?
Saving up for your retirement.
Yeah. You can die rich.
It's nice to have some money set aside, but exactly. If you can't enjoy the journey, I love cliches.
Yeah.
Most people ignore them because it's like, yeah, and they roll their eyes when you pronounce a cliche, but the truth is they became cliches because they were so true that they lasted for millennia.
Right.
The cliches in our lives, if you did nothing but live your life according to the cliches floating around on posters, you would probably be the most enlightened person you know.
Yeah,
If
right.
you could just master those cliches. So it's like, don't roll your eyes the next time you hear a cliche. Listen to it and ask yourself, do I do this? But do I actually? Yeah, I know that's probably true. But do you follow it?
Yeah.
Has it become a part of you?
And the journey sometimes is the part that makes you who you are, right? Like it's not the
The
destination.
journey
It
is all
never
there
it
is.
never is.
Yeah, the journey is all there is. You have no control over the destination. You can influence it, but you can't control it.
Yeah.
If your whole life's about the destination, man, that is a hell of a gamble.
Well,
Because what if it doesn't
some
turn out the way you planned, and it probably won't?
one of the
How are you?
conversations I have with my adult students on a regular basis is like I'll be showing a technique and we'll stay with a theme of techniques for a week or two, and let's say we're working on an arm bar, right? And we're starting in a different position, but the end is the arm bar. I don't care that you got to the arm bar. I care about how you got there, right? Because as you move from X position to Y position, million things could go wrong, and you need to know your alternate routes on all of those, right? If you just understand how to get to the finish line when adversity hits you in the middle of your technique or just in life in general, you're not going to have these other paths or ways to correct it.
Oh yeah,
And most people
yeah,
don't understand that. And I yell at them all the time. I'm like, treat life like your kid's math, right? If your kid does math in school and they know the answer, the teacher doesn't care. They want to see the work, right? Because the work is the journey, and the journey helps you understand all these other aspects of life. And people that are destination people don't get that part. And I kind of went all over the
yeah.
place on that, but that's a really important part of
No,
my
it's
life.
great.
Yeah.
You're talking about the importance of building a foundation because what's a skyscraper built on mud? There was a surgeon who said, "You know what? Give me 4 hours and I can teach anyone how to perform an appendectomy. But it'll take 4 years to teach them what to do if something goes wrong."
Right.
That's what you're describing.
Yes.
What about when life throws a curve? Now what do I do? If I
Right.
only know one way to get there, then I'm going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
So, but with a foundation, it's like, oh, so I teach people how to wing it. It's like,
Yeah.
listen, if you've got the tools, no matter what comes along, you'll be prepared for it. I can do these podcasts all day long.
Right.
Ask me anything you want. I've got so many tools all stored up that you can talk about parenting, you can talk about
Yeah.
health, fitness, wellness, entrepreneurship, anything you want. It's all there. I've
Sure.
already done the work.
But
And
you
so
need
I'm not
to.
worried about you asking a question I can't handle.
Right. But you have the access to the tools in your head to answer these because you've seen it, right? And
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of describing life as. Do you remember those digital posters that they used to have in the mall, like in Spencer's? Right. It
Oh
was just
yeah.
pixels, right? You sit there and you
Yeah. And
stare
if you
at it.
looked at it just right, whoa,
Yes.
it's an
There's a
undersea adventure.
there's a boat in the
There's a
corner.
whale.
There's a lighthouse over
Yeah,
here.
there's
And now
dolphin.
I always see the lighthouse and I always see the boat because I saw it. Right. And if you never
Yeah.
saw it, you're never going to find it in the picture. And sometimes you
Oh
just
my gosh.
need to take a moment
Yeah.
and soak things in.
I've got to use that example when I talk about the Matrix
Okay.
because that's another version because I see past whatever it is that a person is saying and I hear
Yes.
what they're actually who they're being. And so it's very similar to, and once you've seen it, once you've learned how to see beyond the obvious and see the actual code behind everything that's
Right.
happening, it's easier and easier to see until you walk into a room. If I'm sitting in a conference room and there's a business deal going down, maybe it's a hostile takeover and they've brought me in to negotiate
Right.
the deal. Uh, I don't see a bunch of people sitting down making negotiating a hostile takeover. What I see is 12 people all doing everything they can to be validated,
Right.
to prove to the other people in the room that they're
Yeah.
worthy of sitting at the table, worthy of listening to, worthy of believing, worthy of following. They're all, because that is the single driving force for every human being, is to gain validation.
Right.
And there's lots of reasons behind it. We could use a
No,
whole
that's why
show
social
on why
media is so
validation.
important, right? Like, oh, I got 50 likes, right?
Yeah.
Because you're validated 50
Yeah.
times on whatever it
Yep.
was, where you picture your
That's why it
cat.
took off. That is exactly the reason why it took off, is because it's feeding our desperate drive to gain validation. That is the number one driving force after food, shelter, water, and oxygen. But all
Sure.
those needs are met for the average person.
Right.
So what comes after that? It's validation, and at the very least, because think about it, hunter-gatherer days. If your tribe did not approve of you,
Hmm.
they would cast you out.
Right.
And one person in the hunter-gatherer days by themselves, that was a death sentence.
Yeah.
And so the ones who got really good at getting the validation they need, at finding out, am I doing the right thing, the wrong
Right.
thing? Do you like me? Do you not like me? The ones who got really good at it got to stay in the tribe, and they passed those genetic traits
Yeah.
down to their offspring. So now virtually everybody on this planet, other than those with psychopathy, those who are actually missing a part of the brain that
Right.
wants validation, the rest of the world is basically that's what motivates us. From the podcasts we do, the topics, the things we do for other people, the car we buy, the house we buy, the
Yeah.
city the neighborhood we move in, all saying, asking the question, am I okay?
Right.
Am I okay? So the cure, of course, is self-validation.
Sure.
Well, almost nobody ever masters that.
No.
It's much less do they even understand that if I can be totally self-validated, how would that impact my choices and my behaviors? You would not even be recognizable. A person who
Right.
is 100% self-validated, that you wouldn't know that was the same person as the one you'd met before they
No.
become that, because the things they do are so different.
Well, the things in life don't affect them the same way anymore because, like, to
Yeah.
your
Oh,
point,
yeah. Talk about transparent.
yeah, you've seen things and you've heard things and nothing phases you at this point, meaning you in particular. But it's because
Right.
it's like that digital picture where I saw this here and I saw this here and I saw this here and I always see them now, right? Like it's always part of my
Yeah.
perspective because I've seen
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
to share knowledge with somebody, like you have to have seen it or had some sort of perspective where it's been in
Yeah.
there. So when you're getting these guys in and they're having these really honest conversations with themselves, do you see major transformations in people's personalities, or is it subtle sometimes, or have you
Oh,
seen some
yeah.
that are over the
It
top?
Yeah, that's a great question. The word personality is kind of what throws the wrench in there, because what is personality?
Right.
What I could say is I tell this to all of my clients is basically I say, listen, if you play full out, if you give it everything you've got, you follow the program, you will barely recognize yourself in a year
Right.
from now. You'll look back at who you were and you'll go like, wow, I hardly even know that guy.
Yeah.
You'll understand him, but you'll no longer be able to relate to him
Right.
because you will now see the world through such a different set of lenses. So yeah, there's massive transformation, and it will impact your personality. Part of personality is a DNA
Sure.
component. Some kids are born when they're upset, they get angry. Others, when they're born, when they get upset, they cry.
Right.
If you have more than one child, you know
Oh yeah.
that they were brought into this world with some portions of their personality already in place.
Yep.
Anyone with two children or more goes, well, he was like this and she was like this, and we treated them both exactly the same.
Yeah.
So how did that happen? 40 to 60% of who you are is genetic.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but that leaves another 40 to 60% that you have control
Still a
over.
lot of
What are you
room
going to
for
do with that?
corrections, right?
Lots of room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I look at my twins, like one's a boy, one's a girl. One loves ketchup on everything. The other one does not eat any ketchup at all and likes mustard on stuff. And I'll ask them,
Yeah.
I'm
And,
like,
and, and you taught them that, right?
right. I'm like,
No.
why is that? And they're like, it's just the way it is. Like you're just born with certain things that are innate in you. And the
Yeah.
things that aren't innate are the things like we're talking about now is like how you perceive the world, how you interact with others, how you set your goals for the future. Like this is all learned things. And if there's more people like you sharing knowledge like this and getting it out to people, I think, you know, generations from now, if it takes hold and it just keeps moving forward, like the world would be a much better place on so many
Wouldn't it?
levels.
And and of course, starting with our world,
Yeah.
I teach the difference between empowerment and enlightenment is empowerment, and empowerment's a cool thing.
Hmm.
It's about influencing the world around you.
Right.
The more empowered you are, the greater impact or influence you have on the world around you. But the world around you cannot be controlled.
Yeah.
So it can't be the ultimate. The ultimate is enlightenment,
Yeah.
because enlightenment is about influencing the world within.
Right.
And we live in the mind. Everything that we experience goes through our mind first.
Yeah.
And so this is not only where the greatest strides can be made, but it's the only thing you can control. I can't control the world around me, but this world I can control.
You,
So we start with that, and then that expresses itself out into the public,
right.
and other people hopefully
And you can control how
follow
you
suit.
react to the world. I tell the kids in the kids class, and I hate to bring up my classes all the time, but a lot of this is
Oh
like
no, I love it.
microcosm of stuff. Like I'll have a kid acting up and just, being a pain in the ass in class. And sometimes the kid who's that partner will do the same. And my conversation with them is all the time is like, and I correct kids with push-ups, right? I'm just start doing push-ups.
Oh,
I'll come back, right? And I'll look back, and the parents are always so happy because like now they're figuring out something they can use with their kids. And like somewhere around 20 push-ups, these kids they change. Right? I'm like, you still want to do that? And they're like, no, I don't want to behave that way. But I always turn to the other child and I say, listen, you have an option on how you react to this person doing this to you. You can be angry, you can join in and screw off as well, or you can just say, hey, I'm here to learn and I want to learn. And what the point of
yeah,
that is that the reaction is what we control, which is your not empowerment, but in your enlightenment, right? Is how you react to the world and how you can how you perceive it and how you react to it is much different and more in control than trying to control the things outside of you, right? Does it sound accurate to what you were just
yeah.
saying? I'm
Oh,
making sense of it in my head.
uh, yeah, yeah, absolutely. I also teach everyone I work with. I say, listen, whoever's the most enlightened person in any scenario
Hmm.
is the one who's responsible for the relationship.
Yeah,
If you think you're more enlightened than your wife, then it's your responsibility to make sure that you don't come to, that your conversations don't turn into arguments where you're
right.
both just trying to win. You're the one responsible for saying, we need to take a time out right now, honey,
Sure.
because my ego's getting engaged and nothing good's going to come of this. You got to be that person. And of course, then that would open the door for maybe we'll do another podcast specifically on ego, because
Yeah.
that alone
Well, I was watching the one
is a
podcast, and I was watching how you refer to the ego, uh, and how it can get in the way, right? Like again, it's
yeah.
it's
Oh
your
yeah, yeah.
ego
I
is
call it the
controlling how
ego,
you
the
react,
monster in
right?
your mind.
The monster in your mind,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
your ego is how you react to it, right? Like
yeah, yeah.
the reaction is controlled by your ego, and there are days I'll walk in the door and I'll just look at my wife and I'll be like, you know what? Let's just not talk for 10 minutes. Just leave me be.
Mm,
And sometimes she
yeah.
ignores that, and then it turns into a big fight, and she'll do the same, and I'll ignore it, and it'll turn into a fight. And, sometimes I'm not acknowledging the things I should because the ego part is getting in the way.
Your ego is engaged. What I teach, that you're not your ego. It's a separate entity that develops at a very early age. It's like having a guard dog
Right.
that follows you everywhere, and it's trying to keep you from looking or feeling badly.
Yeah.
And it'll do all sorts of things. So it comes down to, you've got to always win. You've got to be right. You've
Right.
got to be acknowledged. You've got to be respected, and so on. And so it takes over. It hijacks your conversations. It hijacks all
Yeah.
sorts of things in your life. And when you let that happen, well, you may as well just leave you're done. The ego's now going to take over, and
Yeah.
then it's going to trigger their ego. And you have two egos going at it. Nothing gets resolved.
Well,
So where you would say to your wife, my ego's engaged right now, honey. No
yeah.
matter what we talk about, I'm just going to end up trying to be right, look good, and win.
Yeah.
So let's wait until I can release my ego, put my ego to sleep.
And
So
I'll
anyhow,
see
go
it
ahead.
in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu all the time. Like I'm a second degree black belt, which means I've been training a long time,
Yeah,
and I'll get a brand new
yeah.
person, right? And I figure at this point I probably have 32,000 or more just grappling matches, like training matches. And we'll get a guy who's come in and he's got zero. And I'll play with him and I'll wrestle with him and stuff. And I see the frustration. I'm like, why are you frustrated? I thought I was going to do better. Why? Why did you think you were going to do better? Right? This is the ego getting in the way. I have
Yeah,
32,000 of
and it's an
these.
unfulfilled expectation.
Yes, I have 32,000 of these. You have one. Like, what do you think the reaction is going to be? I've seen anything that you can throw at me hundreds of times. Right? I'm
I'm
totally
20 steps ahead of you,
yes. And it's the ego
like
part
in
that
the
gets in
movie
their head.
Limitless.
And one of the things I teach people all the time, and I don't know if this is part of your curriculum or not, but being okay with failure. right? You,
Oh, I'm big, big, big. I'm not just okay with it, endorsing it. Fail your way to the top.
yes,
There's no such thing as failure. That's just an
it's
interpretation.
a way to
That's
learn.
looking at a problem as a problem instead of as just an unexpected outcome.
Yeah,
I redefine it. I don't have problems. I have unexpected outcomes,
right.
but I don't have any experience of failure. Is just the absence of growth.
Yeah,
As long as you've learned something, it's impossible to fail.
right. And but
So yeah,
that
it's a
fear of
viewpoint.
failure drives the ego sometimes too, right?
Oh yeah. Failure, fear. Anytime that you're upset in any way, whether it's frustration, anger, sadness, it's that means your ego is probably triggered.
Right.
Because when we get upset, ego triggers and it tries to fix things, and it usually makes things worse. Your ego is like your worst enemy.
Yeah.
It is the thing that gets in the way of most of our issues, even though that's not why it originally developed.
Right.
But it can play, it can also get you to the top of the podium.
Sure.
You can harness it. I call it the 3 R's: recognize when your ego's really engaged, and then either redirect it or release it. It
Okay.
won't stay released forever because it's that guard dog will never go away.
Right.
It's chained to your front door.
Yeah.
But you redirect it when you're competing.
Right.
If you're, let's say, in a tournament, you're using ego because it's like exciting. It gets lots of dopamine
Yeah.
going. And but you'll also notice that the more engaged your ego is, even in a competition, the more likely you are to snap and go the other way.
Yes.
When our ego's engaged, we can also get angry
Yes.
much more easily because ego's like a pit bull,
Yep.
like a pet pit bull. It may be a wonderful little pet, but don't you dare reach in its bowl while it's eating
Well, I'll see it all
because
the
it can
time.
snap on you like that.
You'll see
Yeah.
a guy who's extremely skilled and has a ton of technique, but he's going with somebody of similar skill or better technique. They immediately throw all their technique out the window and try to muscle everything, right? Because the
Ego takes over.
ego takes over, and now they're shut down completely, and they're doing 10 times worse than they would have if they just stayed the course and stuck with their technique. And life is about techniques, right? Like what you're teaching people with these 10
Yeah.
areas of growth is how to succeed and how to understand and being okay with failure and moving forward. That failure is not the end, right? Like
Yeah.
you might be shitty at loving people,
No.
right? But eventually you're gonna probably, if you stick with it long enough, you're gonna get better at it, and then you're gonna find somebody of equal skill, and hopefully it works out. And not necessarily love, but it could be anything,
Yeah.
right?
But yeah. Oh yeah. Failure is just feedback. And all feedback is good.
Yeah.
Anybody who says, I got this negative feedback, no, think of it like this. There's no such thing as negative feedback. There's constructive feedback.
Right.
Constructive means to construct, means to build. And so if you imagine, all feedback is good.
Mhm.
Even if somebody says, I don't like you, really help me understand. Tell me why. Tell me what's
Yeah.
going on. Thank you so much for that. I'm learning. Every time we fail, it's just feedback. Oh, well, then don't do it that way. Let's try this way instead.
Right.
That makes it so much easier. And like a perfect example, even your senses, that's all they're here for is feedback.
Yeah.
Your senses are here for no other reason than to give your brain feedback so it knows what to do next.
Right.
And people think, well, what about, but there's got to be negative feedback. I go, think of it this way. You're out hunter-gatherer days and you're looking for food, and you go down this new pathway and you find a mother bear and her cubs, grizzly bear and her
Right.
cubs. She chases your ass down the path. You manage to escape. Now, you were trying to get to the berries on the other side of the meadow.
Right.
You got unexpected feedback that you didn't want. You didn't want that bear.
No.
But that feedback not only saved your life, but now you're going to go tell everyone in the village, don't go down that path. We're going to use that feedback that was unpleasant.
Right.
Just because feedback is unpleasant, we automatically label it as bad. No, bitter. You know why bitter taste buds are here? It's to alert us to poison.
Oh, okay.
Certain berries are very poisonous.
Right.
And almost without exception, they're bitter. We put it in our mouth, we taste bitter, we spit it out.
Yeah.
Not because it's poisonous, but because it's bitter and it didn't taste good. Well, it just saved our life.
Right.
So bitter is good,
Yeah.
even though it's unpleasant.
And most people don't understand how to acknowledge and understand the feedback they get, whether it's like physical pain or,
Oh, yeah.
or life in general.
Yeah,
Right.
they're too busy wanting it to go away
yeah.
to stop and learn from it.
Right. So when you're teaching these 10 skills that are the 10 categories, the ego is that part of the conversation as well? And it sounds like there's a lot
Ego.
going on.
Yeah, there's the 10 areas of life, but then there are these insights and principles. I call them universal principles because they always apply all the time. to everyone.
Okay.
I don't teach theory. If I haven't already proven it, if I don't have empirical evidence and I can prove it, then
Right.
I don't teach it because there's enough. There are enough insights that are absolute, certain, and proven empirically
Sure.
that if you only mastered a half a dozen of them, you'd be the most amazing person anyone knows.
Wow.
I don't need to teach theoretical
Yeah.
uh, psychology. I can just focus on these absolute areas.
You're
And
sharing
so
real
I stay in
skills and
those.
real knowledge. Like,
Oh, yeah, yeah. And in fact, I tell my clients that 75 minutes we spend together every week is the least of what you're going to get from me because
right.
during that 75 minutes, we're going to be talking about what's happening in your life and I'm going to be giving you all these insights. But for at the end of that conversation, it's just information.
Sure.
Where it's going to change your life is during the assignments. When you apply it to your life, you're not only applying it again and again, which is leading you toward mastery, but you're doing the most important thing is proving that what I taught you is true because we do what we believe.
Right.
And so I tell them my number one job isn't to teach you these things, it's to prove it to you. It's to change your belief system.
Yeah.
And that's why the guys flew their airplanes into the Twin Towers because they believed
Right.
they were doing the right thing, sacrificed their lives for belief.
But they're
So this is why.
it's
Go
almost
ahead.
like they're creating muscle memory, but with their brain, like muscle, like brain
Mental,
memory,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
brain
mental
memory. It
memory,
doesn't,
sure.
yeah, it doesn't sound as cool, right? Brain, because they
Yeah,
memory and
yeah. One of
brain
my
go
books
together
is
automatically. But
yeah, yeah.
it's like
It's all
they're
right. We call it a habit.
yeah they're developing the skills through repetition and failure to get better at it.
Yeah,
And if you're
yeah.
okay with the failure, then the growth is probably much faster. And
Absolutely. Well, you know the saying in Silicon Valley: fail often, fail fast.
yeah, like it's the only way to get
Fail
better
as
at
much
something.
as you can, as quickly as you can, so you can get up to here.
And I tell people all the time, like trust the things you've learned, right? I'm showing you techniques, showing you how to apply them, but when the situation it comes, trust it and allow that muscle memory to kick in and just go with whatever it's telling you to do because you've been here 100 times already.
Oh
Just
my
let it
gosh.
go.
Yes. I coach athletes, and you, I know, must do the same thing. It's basically you teach them, look, you're practicing right now. And so the goal is to get to a point where you don't have to think anymore. It just automatically happens.
Right.
Then you go into a tournament and you go back to trying to figure out what to do and you overdo it. I did this with hockey. I did
Yeah.
this in teaching hockey. Is you don't play as well in a tournament as you do when you're just out there doing pickup games because you're overdoing everything. You have the muscle memory and the extra effort, and so that's why your pucks are all going wide or
Right.
going high. Go out there and forget. I mean, go out there and forget that you're doing a tournament. Forget that this counts. Pretend that all you're doing is giving your body a chance to show you what it knows,
Right.
and then just play.
Just
And
let
then
it
play the
go.
best they've ever played before
Yeah.
because it's all there. And if it's not there, well, then you need to train more.
Right.
But you don't do your training in the middle of a tournament. A tournament is to show what you've learned,
Yes.
not to continue learning in the middle of it.
And I find that a lot of the times that the things that I am very conscious on that if I can make them unconscious thoughts or unconscious techniques, like let's say the arm bar, I'm really good at consciously doing it, but then it becomes really good subconsciously or unconsciously just happening on its own. And I tell people that all the time, like listen, you're at this point in your skill where you need to stop thinking about what you're doing and just let it go. Let it happen. Trust it, trust the process, and you'll be happy with the
Yeah.
results. But it's something you have to allow yourself to do, and to get to that, you have to be okay with that failure part. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and people are scared to death to fail at anything, right? It
Yeah.
holds most people. It's
Yeah.
held me back from a ton of things in my life.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Because we don't understand the value of failure. It's one of the things when somebody does something, I don't care what it is, a competition, a contest,
Right.
whatever it is they're doing. I never ask, so how did you do? I ask, so what did you learn?
Okay, that's a good way to take it, right? Because they're going to learn
Yeah.
something, especially if the outcome was not what was expected, and they got
Exactly.
different results, like the
Yeah.
walking down the path and the bears there. Like you're going to have to go
Yeah.
a different direction,
Right.
and did you choose a different
Yeah.
path?
Instead of how many berries did you get?
Yeah,
Well, what did you learn is like, I learned how to save my life and how to save the life of the whole village. That's not
right.
more important than how many berries I collected today.
Yeah, and you
So
may
what
have
did
learned
you
a new
learn?
path.
Well, changes it. Yeah, that changes the whole paradigm. I'm competing in this contest because I want to learn even more.
Wow.
I'm doing all of this so I can learn and grow instead of so I can win, because winning is just a temporary
Yeah.
measure. And you can have good days and bad days. It doesn't define you,
No.
whether you won or not. But what did you learn? That is something you can hold on to forever.
Yeah. And I have conversations with people too. Like I'll see kids lose at a tournament, and let's say they're in a blue belt division and they're like teens or adults, and they lose to another guy, and they come back, and the first thing they say to me is like, "Oh, my jujitsu sucks." I'm like, "No, it doesn't. That guy's was just a little bit better. Yours isn't terrible.
Yeah,
That guy just has a better grip on what he's doing. It doesn't make yours bad at all.
yeah,
He just is more advanced and has a little bit more of an understanding of what to do. You'll get there. And if you take your
yeah,
skills that you're sharing with somebody, they're going to do the same. But they have to understand that they need to judge themselves only and the results against themselves versus like, because we'll get guys that start the same day, and before you know it, a couple years down the road, one guy's got a higher belt, the other guy's still at whatever rank, and
oh yeah,
it's
yeah,
not because they absorbed it differently, right? And
yeah.
they approached it and took it from a different route, and the stuff you're sharing sounds like it'll take people down, and you probably have to use because every person you coach differently, right? Like because there's
Oh yeah,
there's
oh
no
yeah.
two
That's
people that learn the same way.
absolutely.
Yeah,
It's why they hire me, because they know that whatever it is I'm going to do with them, they can't get out of a book.
right.
Because we're going to go so deeply that it's things that, the book will show them a couple of basic things.
Sure.
Even a podcast, they'll be like, "Oh, this is cool," but when you're actually
Yeah.
coaching one on one, I mean, I'll know the names and ages of all your kids and what they're up to, and
Right.
I'll know everything about you,
But you probably have to
and
get
the
a little
coaching is so much
creative
more in depth.
with some folks as well because everybody learns at a different
Oh
way and a
yeah,
different rate. You probably have to,
yeah,
two guys learning the same thing, you might have 100% different approach to both of them to get to the same place.
absolutely. Absolutely. Everyone is, they bring something interesting to the game, which keeps it interesting for me.
Yeah,
So, and some of them are, I will say, put a judgment on it. Some are easier to coach than others.
sure.
Some, it's like every single thing I say, they challenge me. Lawyers, it's like, well, what about this?
Right.
Well, and do you have any proof of that? And what about that and that and this? And I'm like, okay, take
Trust
a
the
breath.
process.
We'll go with this one first. Yeah, I don't have I can give you my own proof, but you need to gain proof. So we're going to have you do these assignments and you'll prove it to yourself. That's
Right.
way more powerful than me just telling you and taking my word for it.
So over the course of a year through your personal one-on-ones, do you find somebody might get enlightened many times? Right? Like, because they're probably having epiphanies every
Oh
other month,
yeah,
depending on what the
epiphanies.
topic is or whatever they're working on, right?
Absolutely.
And
And it's not every single week they have a massive epiphany,
yeah,
because there's 48 sessions. We one epiphany could change their life forever.
sure,
But we probably average every few weeks a new epiphany where they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, mind blown! Holy cow! Say that again! Oh my
right,
gosh!" I get a lot of that, and it's very validating.
yes,
And it's great, fun, exciting feedback.
sure. But I mean, it's validating for you, and you're getting the endorphins running because you were able to accomplish a goal that you would set out for this person. And at the other end of it, because I'm having these every week when I'm talking to different people. Like the guy I had on the show yesterday, his name was Trent Brock, 3-time cancer survivor, stage 4 cancer, each time.
Yeah.
And then just horror stories. And
Wow.
the whole point of his story was perseverance. The guy I had on last
Yeah.
week was a triathlete, para triathlete. He was blind. He runs with a partner, swims and bikes with a partner. And then I had a woman who's talking about nurturing touch. I had another woman who's different love styles. And every one of these people I'm talking to, I'm like, there's a light bulb. Something's going off. I'm not
Yeah.
as
Oh
well-rounded
yeah.
as I
You're in a
think.
great place.
Yes, I'm learning
Yeah.
from people every day. Like honestly, you and I would never have a conversation just because we travel in different worlds and we operate different ways and I might not identify that I
Right.
need help in an area. But this conversation has been fantastic for me because
Oh
it's
yeah.
validated some of the things I do and kind of reminds me that there's always room for improvement and there's no one perfect out there. And when you're
Yeah.
sharing this knowledge,
And
like
that's okay.
it's okay. It's great. Be okay with being not perfect. I think that's the thing we need to get.
Actually, that's the second. I teach four legs of enlightenment. Uh, it's I mean it's just one piece, but know thyself. That's step one.
Right.
That's the oldest known philosophy, by the way. I mean, Imhotep was putting these on on the pyramids.
Right.
Eventually, Socrates and Plato and the others jumped in, but and started teaching it too. So apparently, knowing thyself is really important. It's
Yes.
been around for 5,000 years, and like you said earlier, very few people really know
It's
themselves.
one of the
So
hardest
we spend a
skills.
bit of time yeah. So we spend a bit of time helping them not only know themselves, but step two, accept thyself.
Yes.
That's so huge. I don't mean just know yourself, what you like about yourself, strengths and weaknesses,
Yeah.
all of it. These are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, and I'm okay.
I know the
With all
stuff
of
I'm
that
really
combined,
bad at in relationships, and I'm working
yeah,
on them,
good for
and
you.
I'm trying to get bad, and I may not have known what they were a few years ago, right? But it's that
Yeah,
self-acceptance where I'm like, "Okay, this is truly what I am,"
critical
and you can't lie to yourself, right? You can put on a
because
facade that the world sees, but inside you are locked in. And so
yeah.
and what was the first one again? It was self-acceptance or
So the
know
first one is
thyself?
know thyself, and now that you know who you are,
Yeah,
accept thyself. Be okay with it. It doesn't mean you don't want to continue growing and
right.
improving your life in every way possible, but at least it means you no longer have to be in self-loathing.
Yeah,
You don't have to put on a show. You don't have to impress anyone. You're okay. You're enough,
right.
and that's enough. You don't need to be perfect. The next one is be true to thyself. Now that I know who I am, I'm now going to live a life that is consistent with who I really am, not with who I think I should be or somebody else says,
Right.
but with this is who I am. You and I are doing it right now.
Yeah.
I love coaching. I love conveying. I love teaching. We're both teachers.
Yeah.
I can tell by the questions you ask. So we have found a way to be true to ourselves and do the things that really bring us great, joy and
Right.
fulfillment. The fourth one is, and this is the hardest one of all, is speak thy truth.
Yes.
In movies, who are the heroes? We love the one who stands up and says what they believe in, even though they're going to be pummeled for it.
Yes.
They're going to be ostracized. The world will not agree with them, and they do it anyhow. We're like, yeah.
Right.
One of the reasons we're so excited is because we know how hard it is.
Yeah.
We know how many times have we not spoken our truth
Yes.
because we didn't want to be judged, we didn't want to be condemned, and
Yeah.
so on. And so, learning to get to a point, but you can't speak your truth consistently if you haven't accepted yourself.
Yes.
You got to be able to say, I'm okay. Whether you accept what I have to say or not is okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to approve of me. As Lincoln said, you can please all the people some of the time, some of the people all the time, but you can't please all the
Right.
people all the time.
Yeah.
And it's being able to do that.
Eh,
How else could you run for politics,
Yeah.
knowing that at any given point, half of the world is going to hate you. The
Right.
other half may love you, but a president who gets a 50% approval rating,
I
he's
mean,
doing pretty well.
yeah.
That means
It's
that in America, that means 150 million people
didn't like you.
hate you. Yeah. How do they keep from blowing their brains out? It's because they've accepted themselves and said, I don't need everyone to like me.
And
That's okay.
speaking your truth is the hardest thing. Like I'm the black sheep of my family. And by black sheep means I'm kind of the odd one. I'm not afraid to speak my mind when someone asks me. And not everybody likes what comes out of my mouth, which is okay. But they appreciate it when it's a situation that requires someone like that. Right. And
Yeah.
I'm getting
Yeah.
better at accepting myself and being true to myself, but there's still a lot of little pieces in between where I might kind of lie to myself or tell myself this is okay. And those are the parts I'm trying to get better at, where I can do those micro coaching to myself and be like, you know what? You could do better here. Like and I guess there's four things like being true to thyself. Like I would think that falls into every one of those categories, right? Like if you have 10 categories and you're great in finance but not good in wellness, probably because you're not being true to yourself at some point, or self-aware or introspective, and a million other reasons. It's amazing to me. I learned a few months ago that most people don't have an inner monologue. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but it's like
I
70%
haven't.
70% of people don't have an inner monologue. I watched a bunch of
Tell me. I've heard inner dialogue, of course.
yeah,
But what is
well,
an
the
inner
same kind of
monologue?
thing, inner dialogue, where they're not talking to themselves and having conversations. Like I'm talking to myself all day long, and like it's almost like I'm two different
Great.
people, right? Like it's my external one, but it's me telling this meat computer to go do
That's
whatever
part
it's
of
going to do.
metacognition.
Yes,
Yeah. That's
And,
great. That's a powerful tool.
and most people don't have that part where they can discuss with themselves what's going on in the moment. And I think as I get better at that, I can get better at the four parts of the conversation we were talking about. Like being true to myself, I have to nail those other three, right? But I'm not going to nail them in every category, right? I can get better and improve, and I might make it to the third finger on what was the third one again?
It's be true to thyself.
Yeah, be true to
Know
thyself.
thyself, accept thyself, be true to thyself, speak thy truth.
Yes, and to get to that fourth one, I have to be able to be good at the third one, and to get to the third one, I need to be good at the second one, and
That's why they're in that order. That's
yes,
why they're in that order.
and to get out of the gate, I need to start with the first one on some of my categories, and it sounds like that's the kind of stuff
Yeah,
you're sharing, and
yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, we're almost like 2 hours into this conversation, and I could keep going. I
Well, you know
truly
what?
enjoyed.
Once in a while, I'll meet someone like you, and it's the feeling's mutual. I'm loving this. You're touching on so many fun and exciting topics.
And it's interesting to
You're going
me.
to go on our list of the guys I want to keep working with,
I appreciate that
and the kind
because
of people I think I want on the faculty for the advisory board
well,
for our
thank you.
nonprofit.
But
You've just got great insights.
I like the fact that I can have these conversations because I've seen you do a lot of podcasts, and every person you talk to is probably a little bit different and acts a little
Yeah.
bit differently, thinks a little bit differently, and you're connecting with a lot of different people. So you're learning stuff. But truly, for me,
Oh yeah.
like I have the luxury of having extended conversations that with people that are specialists in certain things that interest me. So I'm
Yeah.
truly the one benefiting from talking to you. Like I'm enjoying the conversation, and I'm hoping somebody can identify some things in their life where they're like, you know what, I could probably improve here. And if they go to the Limitless Coach website, they could probably find a couple categories. Like how does the website work? Like how would somebody use your website to start improving themselves? And obviously, like you deal with high dollar clientels, but like a regular average person who might not be able to afford your services, but could benefit from some of the things on your website.
Yeah, yeah. I would say that the the limitless coach is more for someone who's looking specifically for coaching,
Hmm.
as opposed to my general moniker, which is just Mark Fournier Presents.
Okay.
If you go to just Google Mark Fournier Presents, you'll have access to all sorts to other sites and to podcasts
Right.
and just a myriad of things. It'll take you to my Mark Fournier Presents YouTube, Instagram, and
Okay.
so on. But ultimately, it will be Limitless University
Right.
is how the world will gain the most, not only from my material, but from people like you, the people I've met over time
Sure.
who I really love what they have to say, and we will then represent them on Limitless University as well.
Gotcha.
And Limitless University is 100% free. Its only purpose is to help people take greater control of their lives, and so that will ultimately be uh, it'll by fall we'll have a lot more information
Right.
populated, and we still it's up. It's just it doesn't have a lot
Sure.
loaded up yet, which is just limitless and then the letter U
Okay.
.org. So limitlessu.org is where they will gain access to as much material and information as we can possibly load up on
That's
that to make
outstanding.
sure
So
that
you're leading them to the water, but they got to drink when they get there, right?
yeah, you
That's
got to be committed.
that's
You
the
got to be
hardest part.
committed.
And the thing I've gathered through this entire conversation is that if you want to make changes, you have to understand and accept where you're starting from and allow yourself to make the changes, whether it's through learning by failure or just repetition, getting better at reacting to things and learning more about yourself. Like everything I've heard so far is like there's a lot going on internally, and if you can harness some of that, the way you perceive the world and the world reacts to you will be a lot different than what you're going through right now. And it could be baby steps. It's not going to be giant leaps. It has to be tiny little
Yeah.
steps, and they build that foundation for success.
Yeah, that takes us back to the journey.
Yeah.
Just let it be about the journey. And if you're out there climbing a mountain, you know what? There's going to be peaks and valleys. There's going to be plateaus.
Right.
You're going to learn a bunch on some points, and then sometimes you hit a plateau. And during this period, it's just now I get to master the material I've learned so far. And at some point, I'll be able to start moving up again.
Right.
No different, I'm sure, than what you teach
It's
in
the exact same things I say
your
all the
martial
time.
arts. Nobody learns at this trajectory.
No.
Nobody.
And if they do, it's short
It's
bursts.
always
It's
up.
not going
It's
far.
yeah. It's exactly.
Well, I really
It
appreciate
comes
you
in
coming
bursts.
on. Can you just give a couple of your links
You
real quick,
too.
and then where people can find you or any books you have, and
Oh,
then I
sure.
would I would love to have
Yeah.
another conversation with you a few months down the road. We can talk about
Same.
ego or anything else, and I am very, very, very thankful that you came on today, and I'm thankful that was it Esther? Is she your assistant? I'm glad she reached out.
Esther, she's
I'm glad
yeah.
she
She's
reached out again
our
and
media.
asked because I was sad that I missed our last conversation, especially after I had done some research on you, and I'm super stoked that I got to talk to you today.
Well, I also teach that everything always works out.
Yeah,
Not necessarily the way we planned,
sure.
but it always works out.
Yeah.
So yeah, my simple contact is yes, obviously to learn more about the coaching, and there are some other links and so on that site. It's a well constructed site, so it's thelimitlesscoach.com and Limitless University uh, will get you there as well. But limitless with the letter u.org
Okay.
will get you at least so that so you could start you could get ready to start pulling in information. Mark Fournier presents. Well, it's just spelling my last name is the hard
Right.
part. So that's F as in Frank, O-U-R, N as in Nancy, I-E-R. So Mark Fournier presents is the general top title I use to get to most
Okay.
places. I'll repeat the one website or the one uh, uh, app that we have on both Apple
I'm
and
gonna hit that
Android
one today. I need
is
that.
yeah. So that is Life Balance Test. Definitely want to do that. I also have created the world's first 100% AI driven life and business coach.
Oh,
And we launched it right after ChatGPT 3 came out because I'd been working on it for years.
wow.
It's one word, it's OmniCoach,
Okay.
spelled phonetically. And that is a tool that's free. In fact, right now we just took it offline because ChatGPT 4 is charging us for every single hit.
Oh,
So
geez.
we need to monetize it so it'll pay for itself. Not so I can make money,
Sure.
but if I get a million hits, I'm in big trouble because I
Yeah.
got to pay for all of
I
them.
just started using
But that's
ChatGPT
just
4,
OmniCoach.
and it's amazing. So
Yeah.
I can imagine like
Oh
where
man.
the AI is going. We can have another conversation about that. But the way
Yeah.
that is taken off, like everything's going to be changed. Like what we're seeing now, 5 years from now, life's going to be completely different.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
coaching alone. The way I use it, the patent I've applied for
Right.
doesn't actually allow AI to coach you.
Okay.
Because what if a teenager goes to AI and says, "What's the best way of committing suicide?" And he goes, "Well,
Yeah.
actually, here are the three best ways."
Right.
I didn't want to risk AI coming back with erroneous answers that could make
Yeah.
things worse. So I use AI to search for the answer to your question it looks at all the greatest minds that have ever lived.
Right.
It compiles all of the answers that they would come up with, and then it says, this is the singularity. This is
Yeah.
the one answer. These that Plato and Socrates and Homer and Buddha and Jesus. This is the one thing they all appear to agree on.
Right.
Then it gives you that
Share that.
ultimate answer, or you can just ask. You can click on all the names we've got. You want to be coached by Jesus? You want to be coached by Oprah Winfrey? Or hey, by a fictitious character, Homer Simpson.
Wow.
We've designed it so that it will go in and figure out, based on everything that's been published to the internet about
Yeah.
that person, said by them, quotes, and said about them, it'll figure out what answer they would probably give you.
I
And
wouldn't
say,
mind having
Abraham Lincoln would
Yeah.
probably say,
I wouldn't mind having an avatar of myself to talk some sense to me every now and then.
that's already there.
Really?
All you have to do as soon as we get this back online, because you've already got content online.
Yeah.
If somebody asks what you would say, asked to be coached by you on, say, martial arts,
Right.
or on any topic you've ever spoken on, it'll search everything that you've ever published. It will come up with a compiled answer, and
Wow.
then it will say, not only here's what he would most likely say, but it will then give it to you in bullet points, and it will say, and here's how you can apply it to your life.
Wow. That's
Because
amazing.
otherwise, it's not coaching; it's just information.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
Just have
This
to
all
make sure
sounds
that I
great.
don't go bankrupt
Yeah, with your
You know?
clicks. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today. Hang on one sec. I'm going to wrap this up and then I'm just going to talk to you for 2 seconds. Hang on one sec.
All right.